Welcome to our webinar today. I am Patrick Gregoni, founding partner of SmartChain International, and today we will talk about demand-driven planning and execution. In 2003, I was planning manager in a pharmaceutical company, and together with the supply chain director, we decided to partner with our packaging material supplier with the aim of getting a better service at a lower cost. The idea was to share with them on a weekly basis our packaging schedule for the next 3 weeks or so. For the pilot, we wanted a product with stable demand, and so we selected contraceptive pills. Consumption in the market is absolutely flat. Women take one pill every day, always, and once they set for a brand, then they typically stay for it for a long time. Therefore, our reasoning, this product should give a relatively stable packaging schedule. Think again, it was a disaster. It was impossible to get a schedule that would stick for more than 2 or 3 days. It was constantly changing, there were constantly urgent orders that needed to be brought forward, and the line scheduler was in constant firefighting mode. It was so embarrassing toward that supplier because we were the ones sponsoring and pushing for this project, and there we were not even able to supply them with reliable data over a period of 1 week. How could this be possible? Are you familiar with this kind of issues? The chances are that you are. As it is shown in the following statistics, 83% of companies report to have at least one of these issues: poor inventory performance, poor service level, high expedite expenses. Now, I know many production planners from the company I worked for. They are very smart people, and when the system is not helping them, they know how to help themselves, as the following statistic shows. 2/3 of companies use Excel spreadsheet to a moderate or high degree as support to their MRP planning. Another 28% use them from time to time. So if we combine both, it results that a total of 95% of companies cannot fully rely on their multi-million-dollar planning systems. So today many companies seem to be plagued by these 3 major issues. Inventory performance is poor, service level is poor, or when achieved at the desired level comes at a tremendous cost. Expediting is a way of life. Why is that? Most companies today run an ERP system which includes an MRP core responsible for planning. MRP was conceived in the 50s, developed in the 60s, and first described by Orlicki in his book with the title MRP in 1975. While MRP was a clear breakthrough at the time and could exploit the calculating power of the emerging computers to explode bill of materials and propagate demand, it had, and still has today, some fundamental flaws. At the time, the benefits were clearly dominant, but in today's environment, with complex and globalized supply chains, increased volatility, customer-driven markets, shorter product life cycles, this is not good enough anymore. Your multi-million-dollar ERP system, at its core, still has 1960s technology. But what are the issues with MRP and with the way companies are planning their operations with it? Number 1, MRP promotes execution based on a forecast. The following statistic shows that industry average companies report forecasting accuracies between 50 and 60%. Even the best-in-class companies cannot do better than 70 to 80%. This means that even in the very best case, what you are producing is 20% wrong, either too much or too little. And this is huge. In most cases, it will be much worse than that. Number 2, MRP makes everything dependent and pegs through the entire bill of materials. And at each level in your BOM, you round up or down to account for batching rules, minimum order quantities, and rounding factors. And at each step, you increase or decrease the demand signal because of dynamic safety stocks adjustments. And so on and so on. The result is an amplification of the demand variability, very well known as the bullwhip effect, and extreme nervousness in the planning system. Small changes in the demand signal results in chaos in the manufacturing plants. Planners are overwhelmed by MRP alerts, most of which are not relevant, and it is impossible to clearly understand dependencies and priorities. Number 3, MRP does not separate planning from execution. MRP is a planning tool. It is correct to use forecast data for medium and long-range planning, but unfortunately, when using MRP, you move seamlessly from medium-range planning to short-term planning and into execution with the wrong information. When it comes to short-term decision-making, what to produce and when, this is execution. It is a different process than planning and should not use forecast information. The impact of all this is well documented in what is known as the bimodal inventory distribution. You have too much of the wrong stuff, too little of the right stuff, and overall too much stuff. To make things worse, due to the nervosity of the MRP, you generally swing directly from having too much to having too little and vice versa without spending any time in the optimum region. What are most companies doing to improve their planning? Well, they do a lot of things. Demand sensing, improved forecasting algorithms, advanced planning systems, better S&OP. All of this is nice, but it won't help. It won't help because all of this is equivalent of doing more of the same and does not address the core issue. Because while they continue to add bells and whistles to their ERP system, the fundamental core is still the same. They have reached a point where every additional dollar invested in improving the current planning system adds additional complexity but gives very little in return. It is time that we question whether this fundamental core is still fit for purpose. The short answer is no. Then the next question is what's next? It is due time for company to address the issue and recognize that a change in approach is needed. This new approach is the demand-driven approach. At SmartChain, we like to call it demand-driven agility, because we believe that agility, in a more general sense, is the key characteristic that is required in the future, and the demand-driven approach is a fundamental element of this broader agility agenda. Demand-driven agility has its formal codification in demand-driven MRP, or DDMRP for short, which is specifically related to the fulfillment of customer demand. The concepts behind demand-driven are not new. Some key principles were codified in the lean literature, like for instance the pull principle. Goldratt's theory of constraints is another contributor of great demand-driven principles. Factory physics principles exposed by Hoppe and Spearman are key to understand the scientific basis of pull, queuing theory, and the impact of variability on manufacturing systems. Six Sigma, finally, plays an important role because it gives the tools to understand, quantify, and reduce variability in manufacturing systems. So let's review two fundamental principles that are true for every operation and that are at the core of what demand-driven supply does. The first principle is flow. Flow is the rate at which purchased raw materials are converted into sales to satisfy customer demand and is the driver of return of investment. Demand-driven is all about promoting and protecting flow. And as you see, it is the foundation of the demand-driven pyramid. The second principle, which is actually a physical law, is that all variability in a manufacturing system will be buffered by a combination of time, capacity, and inventory. This is always true. If you are in the waiting list for a transplant, you can appreciate how true this principle is. There is zero inventory, capacity is provided by fate, and therefore only time is available to buffer for demand variability. You get on a waiting list, and you wait until it's your turn. Understanding this buffering law is fundamental for supply chain professionals. You must decide how to buffer the variability and not let the system decide for you. In fact, the first step for implementing demand-driven is to make conscious decision on how to buffer for the variability in your system. Generally, the time a customer is willing to wait for a product or service is constrained, and it is dictated by the business you are in. Being able to fulfill or exceed that customer expectation with a high degree of reliability can have tremendous impact on your return on capital and hence on the success of your business. Based on that constraint, you should define the other two buffers, inventory and capacity. This means that you need to define where your order inventory interface should be placed. This decoupling point is sometimes also referred as push-pull interface or pacemaker. There will be other decoupling points upstream in your supply chain where you will have to decide to keep inventory as a buffer in order to decouple the demand signal and thus dampen the bullwhip effect. The decision of where to place these decoupling points is a fundamental principle of demand-driven and strategic in nature. Where to hold inventory and why is actually more important than how much. Flow only matters if the demand wants what is flowing. So here we come to a key characteristic of demand-driven. As the name itself says, it's demand-driven. This means that order creation and release and execution are only triggered by actual demand signals. Either I have sold my product to an external customer, or a stock item has been used by a downstream internal customer. So let me explain you how this actually looks like by going through the 5 sequential steps of DDMRP implementation. First, you have to select your strategic decoupling points where you will place your inventory buffers. This is not everywhere in your supply chain, and there is a strict process to follow to get to this decision. Second, you need to size these inventory buffers according to known parameters, like average demand, demand and supply variability, lead time, minimum order quantities. Third, this buffer will be dynamically adjusted based on changes in demand or to follow specific demand patterns, like seasonality, product phase-ins and outs, demand trends, promotions, and so on. Fourth, pull replenishment orders are generated based on demand signals, not forecast. This is not just a reorder point, as the formula contains known supply and demand information as well as current on-hand inventory. Lastly, monitoring is very visible and simple. The few alerts that remains are relevant and clearly prioritized. As you see, the word forecast was not mentioned here, except to say that it is not used. While forecasts still have their use in the demand-driven world, but they are used only for what they are relevant. Forecasts are used for medium and long-range planning, but not for releasing order and execution. Manufacturing orders, purchase orders, stock transfer orders are generated and released by demand signals only. I have a demand signal when I actually consume a stock item and my inventory is decreasing accordingly, or when I have a firm order from an external customer. This is called demand pull. As you see, in demand-driven there is a planning process, which is about defining and sizing buffering inventory positions, and an execution process which is about acting on demand signals to replenish these buffers. The result of this separation between planning and execution is that while your organization is ready, your resources are not committed into actual work unless a demand signal is present. Now, there is sometimes some great confusion on this point. I have experienced instances where the marketing companies were maintaining their sales forecast in the ERP system. This sales forecast went through the MRP, netted against available stock and offset using lead times, and then the net requirements were propagated to the plant. And if they fall within a predefined time fence, they got converted into orders. Great, we are lean, say the plant people. We only start producing when there is a firm order. Technically, yes, maybe, but in fact they were still very much on forecast push. Because at the origin of that demand signal there was a forecast, and the plant was executing on that forecast. Why does demand-driven work? How do we know that it works? The only way to stop nervousness and the bullwhip effect is to stop variation to be propagated between the parts in the system. This is accomplished by decoupling the supply chain and buffering the decoupling points. We know that demand pull works because it is based on sound scientific and logical principle, and because there is strong empirical evidence supporting these facts. Companies that have implemented demand-driven have huge benefits from it in terms of service, inventory efficiency and cost. This slide shows typical results achieved by companies that implement demand-driven supply. Inventory reduction of 30, 40 or 50%. Shortened customer lead time, combined with service level close to 100%, reduction of expediting and firefighting by 80%. Planners in these companies are surprised how simple and robust this kind of planning becomes. Planning in a pull environment means defining target buffer inventories. This is comparatively much more simple than trying to set the release rates in an MRP push system, which can only be defined in relation to capacity. In addition, pull systems are much more robust than push systems, and the impact of a mistake in setting these target buffers has a relatively modest impact in terms of performance loss. On the other side, a similar error in setting release rates in an MRP schedule would have dire consequences. We spent the last 10 minutes talking about planning methodologies and principles. Fine, but how do you do it? Don't we need some kind of appropriate tools and technology to do it? Yes, and today this technology is available. At SmartChain we collaborate with Orchestrate, which offers a unique tool to plan and execute in a demand-driven environment. Orchestrate is truly a great piece of software. You can interface it to your ERP system, so all master data and transactional features are maintained and stay the same. It is cloud-based and provided as software as a service. This means that you don't need any IT installation, you just access it on the web. Think of the potentialities. Even if you have different ERP instances in your company, it becomes very easy to plan end-to-end and even include your supplier and customers in your extended value chain. In a demand-driven environment, with the proper technology, the planner and scheduler job completely change, but in a way that it gets much more interesting. Instead of spending hours running behind late orders, decrypting MRP alerts, rescheduling, reprioritizing and expediting, the planners will be much more focused on analyzing demand trends and proactively plan to circumvent known events. The job becomes much more interesting and rewarding and much less stressful. Orchestrate has been implemented in some few companies like Boots, PZ Cussons, Grundfos, 3M with amazing results. Service levels can be maintained or even increased at a very high level, while inventories are reduced by 30% or more. Expediting becomes the exception rather than the rule, and many costs related to expediting just vanish. Just to highlight once more how dire the situation is today, I want to make you aware that there is an industry out there thriving on the fact that you are not in a position to properly supply the right inventory in the right place. This is an email I received not long ago by such a company, which makes a business out of repackaging medicines. Let's just read it. We can repack finished product with automatic validated lines, in order to assure 100% rework packed. This project is capable of generating important savings and boosting the supply chain as well, including an interesting option related to the overstock management, large stock of product in country A and stock out in country B. We can turn the stock misalignment from country to country without manipulating the primary pack. This option dramatically reduces cost, lead times and prevent any safety quality issues. Important savings, customer chain boosting, reduce cost, reduce lead times, seriously? So in closure I want to repeat it. No amount of demand sensing, better forecasting algorithms, S&OP or advanced planning systems will never get you out of the current planning mess. And when everything fails, you will still have someone like these guys here that will help you. For a fee, of course. The future of demand-driven is there to be grasped. Dozens of companies have already implemented demand-driven methodology, some using Orchestrate, some using other tools, and all have achieved similar results like the one described earlier, and often within just a few months from implementation. SmartChain is affiliated to the Demand-Driven Institute, DDI, and is an accredited provider of the Certified Demand-Driven Planner program. We will organize the Certified Demand-Driven Planner training in UK and in Ireland in April 2015. This is a 2-day course that goes at the core of the demand-driven MRP methodology. Places will be limited, so please contact us if you are interested and let the journey start. Thank you for your attention. We will keep the webinar open a few more minutes to answer your questions.